We are live. We are live from Yogaground studio Fairhaven for those of you who are wondering where we are. And we're like, people. It's not just me today. It's also Basit. Yay! But proper distance, of course. We're doing our job of social distancing. We are here for a 45-minute flex class. I'm just kind of like usual, giving a little time for the last people to join in. And then we will soon begin. So, also good with a little reminder that if you have any questions, you are of course welcome to just type them and ask them. Today, the focus of the class is going to be on the spine. And since it's a bit colder today, maybe you want to have a long sleeve, maybe you want to have socks. I don't know. You decide, of course. I think that we are there. So let's get into it. A block will be good for today. First pose, standing. Block in the hand or just next to you on the floor, as the first pose is going to be a standing forward fold. So feet more or less hip width apart. And then draw the chin down towards the chest and begin to lean forward. I like to place my hands up on a block to begin with. And maybe you feel like you want to grab hold of opposite elbows. Before we come into stillness, just allow your upper body to sway a bit from like side to side. Just kind of a little introduction, saying hi to your body, your spine, the lower back, the hamstrings, maybe the neck, moving the head, however it might feel nice. And when you feel that, okay, I'm ready, then begin to come into stillness. As said, you can use a block to support your hands so that you're not into the deepest part straight up. As always, when we do this standing forward fold, it is one of the more yang poses that we do in this yin-like practice. So remember to still embrace that stillness. Whenever you feel that you want to just like open your mouth and sigh it out, feel free to do that. Today I had a nice cup of tea with one of those lovely little wisdom words. I'd like to share that with us or with you all, including myself, because I just thought it was so good and perfectly in line with my theme this week. So it went like this. Never try to impress others. Try to impress yourself. Never try to impress others. Try to impress yourself. So speaking about that, not because you want to impress anyone else, then possibly yourself, but hardly even that. But notice if you have room to come deeper into your forward fold. Where can you soften more? Notice how you have your feet and the weight in your feet. Is it just towards your heels? Or is the entire sole of the foot helping to carry weight? I like often this image when I'm standing in this pose to kind of just envision how those bothering thoughts, those thoughts that no longer serve me, how they kind of just like drip away from the top of my head, away down onto the mat, and off they go. Drip, drip, drip. Allow all those thoughts that no longer serve you to simply drip, drip, drip away. Notice where you feel the pose. It is like this line, this stretch along the entire backside of your body, beginning from your heels, over the backside of your legs, over your buttocks, your lower back, the middle back, the upper back, the neck, and to the crown of your head. With your next exhale, begin to place your hands down towards the mat. So bend your knees to make it happen. Slowly come towards hands and knees on your mat. You can keep your eyes closed and find what feels like a good position for you. Just a few rounds of breath. You can sit upright, kind of back on your heels. You can do a child's pose. You can do a tabletop. Kind of just giving yourself a few rounds of breath to arrive, to allow the tissues of your body to soften. And the next pose we are doing is quite the opposite of what we just did. So it is a back bend. What we just did was a forward fold. So the next pose is Sphinx pose. So come down on your belly. And coming into Sphinx pose, place your elbows underneath your shoulders. And before we come into, again, the hold of the pose, I want you to push your forearms into the floor, push your upper body away from the floor, and as you exhale, soften into your shoulders, kind of like sink down. We'll do it again 2 more times. So push your forearms into the floor, lift your upper body away from the mat, and exhale, soften into your shoulder joint. Last one, gently push in, press away from the mat, and exhale, soften. And that's a nice place to stay. You can place your legs, what feels like a good way. But just taking the first few rounds of breath into the pose to notice. We'll do a little different thing in Sphinx pose. So today we'll also add a little neck stretch. So in your Sphinx pose, for the next minute, draw your left ear towards your left shoulder and see if you can kind of find a stretch on the side of your neck, the right side of your neck. Feel free to kind of just wiggle or adjust so that you can find the stretch more or less almost from the right ear down towards the right shoulder. You can allow your eyes to rest, your eyelids to be heavy. One more breath in this stretch for the neck. And then begin to bring the head slowly back first to neutral. Maybe you take a breath there. And then you turn the head over towards the other side. So the right ear towards the right shoulder. And feel free to adjust however it feels nice. However you feel the stretch from about your left ear down towards your left shoulder. Just allowing a bit of tension in the neck to release. And then allowing the head to move back to neutral. And feel what feels best for you. Maybe you keep your head sort of upright. Maybe you allow your chin to kind of drop down towards the floor. Your decision with the head. And your decision with the legs. Some prefer to practice Sphinx pose with the legs together. And some people prefer to practice it with the feet almost more than mat width apart. Feel free to try. Today, I said the focus is on the spine. Moving the spine in those 6 given directions that the spine can move in. Forward fold, back bend is the 2 poses that we began the practice with. And we'll work our way through the other 4. A few more rounds of breath. And with your next exhale, release all the way down towards the belly. Maybe you place your hands on top of each other and rest your chin or your forehead on the hands. And simply just notice, before trying to counter move, how does it feel in the lower back? Sometimes we feel a lot of sensation and sometimes we don't feel so much. Then begin to deepen your breath. So when you inhale, allow your belly to push into the floor. You can almost feel how your back gently rises up towards the ceiling. In class, this is sometimes when I come over and place my hand in your lower back and tell you to breathe into my hand, to notice how the back gently lifts up away from the floor. And then From here, if it feels nice to maybe allow your hips to sway from side to side a bit to create a bit of movement, maybe that feels nice. Or maybe you bend your knees and draw the feet off the floor and then allow the feet to one side and the other. If it feels nice, allow that to happen. If it feels like shit, don't do it. This is the good thing about practicing at home, that we often are less prone to do things that really don't make sense to us. In your class setting, it's easier to look around and think, oh, everyone else is doing it, I should also do it. No, you shouldn't. From belly, however, it feels clever, make your way to a seated position. And this, I think it's nice to use the block. But maybe that's just me. So we're going to begin to lean towards the left side first. And I like to use the block just outside of my left hip. So the left hand can lean into the block, it can lean into the mat. What we're doing is basically side bending the spine. And I'm a bit of a lazy one, so I also like to place the elbow on the high edge on the block. And then I can lean my head into my hand and do as little as possible. It's brilliant. But I said one option is also really just to have the hand into the mat and lean into the hand. Try to keep your right buttock still kind of in contact with the mat. Sometimes it can be nice to keep the right hand gently pressing towards the right leg to kind of make sure that that grounding sensation is still present in the butt area. Side bending. So feeling it from more or less the right hip up along the ribs. Never try to impress others. Try to impress yourself. And in this pose, perhaps try to impress yourself with your presence. How present can you be in the pose? Breathing into your belly. And maybe noticing the sounds around you, but with as little distraction as possible from it. It's like this very distant, far off. All the sounds that just fade out into the background. In some bodies, it's a nice addition, about now halfway through the hold, to draw the right arm above head and kind of lock it behind your head to create an additional, oh my God, that was a hard word, an additional kind of sensation into the pose. But if you, like me, feel that that's way too much, feel free to go back. As always, more is not better. At least not always. Unless it's ice cream. Weird comparison, I know. But more ice cream is always better than little ice cream. one last minute in the hold. And depending on how it feels for you, if you want to turn your head so that the nose is pointing more down towards the mat, you kind of still stay in the pose. You simply just turn the head. Sometimes for the neck, it can be a nice adjustment. I don't know in your body, but in my body, a side bend is quite often holding a lot of sensation. So as it's now time to begin to move out, take the time. Maybe use the other arm to slowly push yourself out of the pose. And find some stillness. We're not heading straight into the second side. We want to find stillness. If your legs need a bit of a break, you can of course just lean back and kind of straighten the legs out in front of you. It's so easy to rush to the second side, but take this little time in between the sides to kind of reset. It's easy to go from one side over to the second side and expect the second side to be like the first in terms of depth, in terms of sensation, but often that is not the case. So feel that you have kind of blanked your memory. You have no recollection on how it felt on the first side as we now head to the second side. I would invite you to switch your legs so that you have the weird leg in front. I'm not going to force you, but it's a good little thing. So in this pose, begin to again lean to the other side. You can take exactly the same on the second side. Or you can do a different variation. I said I like to have my elbow up on the block and lean my head into my hand. It's a nice one for me. But feel free to try another variation. Never try to impress others. I think maybe the reason that one kind of made so much sense to me when I read it today was because I think I've been doing just that lately. Trying to impress others. Trying to keep myself busy, producing, delivering, impressing maybe. And I'm beginning to slowly, sometimes I feel very slow, slowly to realize I don't have to do it all. There's no one else to impress. It's okay to take time to rest. Feel free to explore how you place the other hand as well. Again, in my body, it makes a lot of sense to have my left arm on my left leg to kind of ground it down towards the floor. But sometimes it's also nice to have it on the complete opposite leg. To kind of just like hold your chest up, or how to put it. And as said, we are now approaching half into the hold. So maybe you want to draw that arm above head and place it behind the neck. If you do that option, just make sure that you're not having too much activation in your arm. And it's also fine to have the arm above head for 5, 10, maybe 15 rounds of breath, and then bring it back down again. As soon as you notice that you begin to kind of grip with the muscles, that's a little indication that, okay, maybe I am trying a bit much. You're on the last minute in the hold. Impress others versus impress yourself. There's a huge difference between those two. And it feels now that people are reflecting a bit more. Who is it that I want to impress? And who is it that's worth trying to impress? With your next breath, slowly coming out of the pose, allow all the sensations to be there. If it feels like a nice idea to lean into your hands and straighten the legs out in front of you, to come into the stillness, maybe allow that. Maybe you notice a bit of a difference between the two sides, one that you just compressed and one that you just sort of lengthened. Feel free to invite a bit of movement that just feels like nice in your body. Maybe it's just moving in the hips, creating a bit of movement for the shoulders, for the neck. Maybe you are just like dying to stretch. Just a little lovely extra movement. And then we are going to come down for the last pose before Shavasana. It's going to be a supine twist. And as always, the block or similar is good to have with you. So transition yourself on your back. As you come to the floor, maybe you keep the knees bent and the buttocks to the floor, the heels into the floor. And speaking about buttocks, lift your butt up and move it towards the left on your mat. If you want to use the prop, have it to the right side of your mat. And then draw the knees down towards the right side. Maybe on top of the block. Maybe not. I like to begin the first part of the pose to place my right hand on my belly and the left arm kind of in opposite direction away from the knees. But feel free to explore. What feels good for you to place your arms? Maybe you straight up like our cactus arms. Maybe you like to extend the arms into a T position. After all, it is your practice, and it is your body, your sensation in the pose. So this twist for the spine. We did the side bend to the left and to the right, which was then movement 3 and 4, and the movement 5 and 6 to kind of come to the number 6 in terms of the movements, the directions of the spine is twists. So twisting to the right, and eventually we will twist to the left. And each time we do a twist, each time we step on the mat, it's going to be different. So with your eyes closed, feel how it feels in your body. And you've been in the pose for a number of rounds of breath already. So maybe you want to explore a different variation. Maybe deeper, maybe just a bit different. I often like to move my butt even more towards the left. And lately, I've been kind of just playing with extending the top leg. It kind of gives a nice little addition in my body. When I extend that top leg for me, I also get a stretch along the outside of my leg and really into my lower spine. Practicing from home gives us this chance of stepping away from the potential need or desire of impressing anyone else in the room. You don't even have to impress yourself, to be honest. But sometimes when we're in the yoga room, when we are surrounded by other people, we take choices, we make options that perhaps we wouldn't do if it was just us. When we practice yoga on our own, we tend to listen more inside. What feels good and what feels not so good. Can you allow your breath to go a bit deeper? Impress yourself with slowing and deepening the breath, slowing down the frequency. The amount of breaths you do in 1 minute. The slower we make them, the fewer we take. With your next inhale, begin to make your way back towards your starting position. Meaning, find that neutral place on your back. feet into the floor, knees bent. Use the rebound, the stillness in between the two sides to make your memory of the pose on the first side completely blank. There's nothing that you need to strive for. As we begin to make the pose for the second side, lift your buttocks up and move them towards the right side on your mat. And then allow the knees to drop towards the left side. Decide how you want to place your arms. Allow yourself to shift around a wee bit until you find what feels like a good position for the legs, for the arms, for the neck. My hope is that when we all get to practice in the same room again, when we all choose to practice together, that we practice together, but on our own. That we have learned to stop trying impressing anyone else. And we have learned to make the practice to be about ourselves. That we have learned to trust what our body is telling. And that we have realized that our bodies are smarter than we are. And that we, by listening to what the body says, we know what we need to do. And often that is not what the person next to us is doing. Feel free to adjust yourself into the pose a bit more. Maybe you want to take a different variation with the legs, with the arms. Maybe you keep the block, maybe you remove the block. But what feels good on this side? Notice the sensations along your spine. Where do you feel it? Lower, middle, upper part of the spine, or maybe the entire spine. Can you allow the breath to deepen? Can you feel the breath in both your belly and your rib cage? Allowing the breath to kind of become the soundtrack of your practice. Complete the round of breath that you are on. And then begin to make your way slowly back towards your back. You can still keep your knees bent and the feet into the floor for just those few rounds of breath in your rebound. We are heading for a much longer rebound as it's time for Shavasana. So begin to make your way into Shavasana. Most likely simply straightening your legs. Maybe allowing a bit of space between the feet. Allowing the feet to open up away from each other. Feel how the entire back side of your body is being held by your mat, by the ground underneath you. Everything is getting heavy. There's no control on your breath. Your body is simply breathing itself. As always, with a home practice, feel free to stay as long as you want to in your Shavasana. When you feel that your practice is coming to its end, I invite you to roll towards your left side with your eyes still closed. Roll to the left side. Draw the knees to the chest. And just lay on the side, breathing. And from your side, use your top arm, your right arm to push down into the floor, to push yourself into a seated position. Eyes are still closed. Hands eventually together in front of your heart. Never try to impress others. If anything, try to impress yourself. Be impressed with your own presence. Be impressed with your own practice. And be impressed with your own awesome body. Namaste.